I'm Freddie. I started a YouTube channel in 2010 and started doing comedy, action, visual effects driven stuff. I've been kept up with it ever since. Started with VFX. I think it was like early. I don't know, some of the first stuff that I did was visual effects. Like I remember the first thing I did with my brother was we would take pool cues and like hit each other with them and do like 6 sword fights, and then we would go to like it was like Premiere 3.0 I think at the time, and doing like lightsaber stuff. So like Star Wars lightsaber stuff was like the very first thing that I ended up doing. So I've always kind of been doing here and there visual effects, and just kind of kept up with it. And it was always something where it's like I never really concentrated on visual effects. It was always like I wanted to do something, and then you have to learn visual effects to do that. It's like I wanted to do a Star Wars thing. And so I had to learn how to do Star Wars, like lightsaber stuff, in order to do that. So that's kind of my background. Yeah.
Cool. I'm Kaitlyn, and I started, so when my family first moved to the US, we got a computer, and back in the day, it just came with Photoshop. So I just kind of started messing around with like just cutting out different images, and I think that's where I first got into visual effects, or just like image manipulation. So like that, and like Minesweeper just kept me busy for days. And then in school, I did a lot of fine arts. I think it's more prevalent now, but when I was in school, there wasn't a lot of like digital track. But I think having like a fine arts background definitely helps. So I did a lot of like figure drawing, sculpture, which I was all bad at. So like I didn't feel as confident as I did on the computer. So then I just kind of found a program where I can just kind of combine everything with visual effects and just like digital art making. So yeah.
Sweet, what's up guys? I'm Clint Jones. I got into VFX because I was really into like martial arts movies and like war films. I had a bunch of airsoft guns, and I was like, well, I should shoot something with this, but I don't know how to work a camera. So my friend came over, he had like a little like cheap camera, and he showed me, like he recorded over here, hit stop, recorded over here, hit stop, and there was a cut, and I was like, oh, that blew my mind, it totally blew my mind. And so we like filmed a little fight scene and used some airsoft guns, and I was like, well, it looks cheap because like it doesn't look like they're shooting. So I used like Windows Movie Maker to like save out a frame and then import the frame into like fireworks, Macromedia fireworks.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Put the muzzle flash on, like a cheap muzzle flash.
Yeah.
Import the frame back into Movie Maker, which would crash like 10 times a day. And then I would have a muzzle flash, and then you add your sound effect, and like I was like, sweet, I want to learn more. So then I found like Video Copilot, and it just went from there. So.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Video Copilot is like the place for tutorials on using After Effects, basically. And there's other, I don't know, I'm not very familiar with everything on there, but it's an incredibly awesome resource.
Yep.
So I kind of want to just dive right into it. A lot of people associate VFX with flash bang whiz, like storyless kind of fluff that is put in big studio movies, or it's kind of viewed as like I have to have VFX to have a good short on YouTube. I have to do this. I want to talk about how does VFX fit into a good story, and what does VFX have to do with storytelling, and do you have to know VFX to do what you want, or vice versa? Just general conversation.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people start off and they'll go to Video Copilot and they'll do a FX tutorial, and they'll do like a little test shot, and she'll shoot it or something, or they'll follow the tutorial, do a test shot. That's kind of as far as they go. And while that's good for like learning how to do something, or learning the mechanics of doing something, it doesn't really help you sort of progress in terms of using that thing. It's like if there was an equivalent, it would be like if you had like a hammer, right? And you're just like, I'm gonna figure out how to hammer this one nail, and that was it. And you're like, all right, well now I can just hammer this one nail over and over again. But it's like, well, what if you want to build like a desk or something? But I don't know how to do that, but I know how to hammer like this one nail in this one way. So, and I think on YouTube there's tons and tons and tons of effects like test shots. Like there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of people who do that, and they put it up on YouTube, and it doesn't really stand out because a lot of people are doing it. And what really starts to be interesting, what starts to stand out, is using those skills that you get in doing some sort of effect and then applying that to a script, to a story, making it be more than just the effect by itself. Because just the effect by itself is like kind of useless. It's kind of just like a magic trick. It's cool, it's awesome, but it doesn't really last. And I think it's a lot of times when you think of the best visual effects shots, or you think of your favorite moments in movies that have visual effects in it, they're always tied to some story thing. They're always tied to some character thing. It always has a root or a ground in it, rather than just being like, oh, it was cool because I saw. Like nobody was like, man, yeah, Star Wars is cool because there's like a spaceship. It's like, no, Star Wars is cool because it's like, oh yeah, nobody looked at the Death Star and was like, yeah, the Death Star, that was like a cool explosion thing. It's like, no, the explosion came after they fought and they got in it, and there was a whole scene and they shot the torpedoes down the thing, and it's like that was why you cared. If it was just like a shot of like a thing exploding, like yeah, all right, whatever. Like you've seen that over and over.
The Millennium Falcon was cool because it had a personality. It was broken down and beat up, and it didn't always work, but you loved it. But it's not. If you looked at the Millennium Falcon without all that backstory, I think it would be kind of.
No, that's not true. The cockpit was on the side.
What?
I'm just kidding.
What?
The cockpit's on the side of that.
I'd never said anything about the cockpit.
It's so interesting. No, but no, you're right though, because like you can look at like sci-fi movies that have like spaceships. There's tons of sci-fi movies with spaceships, right? But the iconic spaceships and that kind of iconic stuff has personality. It's just like it's not just like a rocket with fins on it. You've seen that all over the place.
Yeah, so I think, going off what Freddie said, it's definitely a tool, and it's a great tool to help you create like an atmosphere or environment that wouldn't exist or impractical shoot or something, but you definitely have to tie it in so you can capture the audience attention longer than just have that magic trick finish. Because that is just like a really cool 3-second thing, but it doesn't really like linger or anything like that. But I think, for me at least, like when I'm like coming up with like a script or something, I don't think in terms of like VFX and then build outside from that. I'm thinking like, oh, this is kind of like oh, I want to tell like something that's like really funny, but then and then this plant will have to like break or something. Be like, oh, I can do that on set, or I can do that in visual effects. Like that's like a tool that's at my disposal. But I don't really, it's like you wouldn't really like build a whole house with just one hammer. Like you have to use other things and use other whatever, but like that's one tool that you can definitely use. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these guys pretty much said it all. Like it's good for establishing and setting stuff up, like a world, like sci-fi world, or payoff, like the Death Star, right? It's not, the whole point is not the VFX. The point is the story. And if it's there for no reason, then it shouldn't even be in there because it's not moving the story forward, And like, it's like a magic trick, Like it can be there to like really like build that moment up, and that's what VFX are great for, It's like that wasn't real. That's crazy, And
it's like a deluxe magic trick.
It's like a deluxe magic. Yeah, exactly. It's like a deluxe magic trick.
Yeah.
I mean, you're watching a movie, you know it's fake, but still, like, if it's a good movie, you're like in on the movie, and you're like, that was awesome.
Yeah. And I also want to kind of, along that vein, bring this up of, we've seen VFX almost completely replace practical effects, and talking to a lot of practical effects artists, that's kind of a worry that a lot of people have. And we're kind of seeing a little bit of a resurgence of practical effects and that kind of stuff, but I'd like to talk about the possible relationship between the two, and does one have to replace the other?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people will those are big like practical versus not practical VFX, and there's a big debate there. Like, and I remember like Interstellar. Like we saw Interstellar. Like I remember how many people like were just like, yeah, Interstellar looks so rad because did you know they actually built that model of the ship? And it's like it's like a real ship, and that's why Interstellar looks so cool. And I remember being like, I don't know, I saw Interstellar. The coolest stuff in that movie wasn't the spaceship, it was the black hole, which is all computers. So I don't know what you're talking about, how Interstellar is so cool when it's mostly computers still. They're like, yeah, but they did, like, yeah, but it's still, like, I don't know.
and then also like the other thing too was like with Interstellar, and like this is like my big pet peeve from the movie. Like, how many times did they cut to like the ship? If you guys have seen it, the ship, like the GoPro angle from the fin, you know what I'm talking about? Like looking over the ship. I love that angle. That angle's great. I see that angle all the time. I see that angle 50 times in that movie.
Yeah.
It's like at a certain point, you're just like,
It was like the only angle.
well, it's because there was like, well, we have this practical thing, we can mount something to it. Okay, we can mount it on the fin. So that was like, so to be, to me, it's like, yeah, that looked good when they used it that one time, but when they used it 50 times in a row, you're just like, okay, it's a model now. Like to me, it was like, okay, it felt like a model, and it felt like actually almost a restrictive thing. And that to me is an example of where a practical effect ended up holding that back and being like, hey, this doesn't feel like space flight anymore. It feels like I'm on like some sick skateboarder video, like watching Interstellar. So I was like, eh. But on the other hand, so like take another sci-fi movie. Who's seen Elysium? Not as many people, not surprisingly. Elysium is like, okay, it's all visual effects, The coolest effect in that entire movie is like there's a character whose face gets blown off, and then it like reconstructs that he goes into like a surgery machine, and then like reconstructs his face. Like that's they shot that as a practical effect. They shot that just a straight up. They had a really good model of the actor's face, and then they like messed it up, and then they just like shot it time lapse, and they played it in reverse. So it went from messed up to normal again. And like I remember in the theater, everyone was like, "All right, cool, robots, and all right, we're flying into space and stuff," and everyone was okay. But when they saw that, everyone was like, "Whoa, that's so cool!" Because that was the best part of that movie. So it's like it really depends. Again, it's different tools, right? So practical effects are a great tool, and they let you do a lot of things. And then when you go into the computer, another great tool lets you do a whole different set of things. And then just to sort of speak practically. For us, even at our level, and I assume pretty much everyone else here, the level of like super nice like visual effects, it's generally hard to attain, right? So you're actually better off, you're gonna get better results by relying more on practical effects and using sort of more consumer tools to fix up practical things than it is to try and be like, all right, well, I need to do a full spaceship, sort of thing, right?
Totally.
Yeah, and I think like if you think about like them being tools, you have to think of the bigger picture and how you can use this tool here versus another. Like for a lot of things, like Freddie said, it will look better if you shoot it on set, and if all things encompassing that is possible. Like, oh, can you get like the permits? Can you get the pyro? Is it safe to do this? And all that kind of stuff. So if it's practical, then yeah, I think there's no reason to be like, oh, we have to use computers for this one thing that we can just light something on fire and be done in 10 seconds. I was supervising on a feature, and there's one day where the entire day was literally blowing up old muscle cars, and it was like the best day on set. But I think you can learn a lot from both ways, because that's kind of what I learned. The trick I'm still using now is like if you just take a lighter and you just light it, and then you just take some reference pictures, and you can be like, this is what the fire is supposed to look like in this environment. And this is the best that this fire is going to look like, because this is the real fire, right? So if we're going to have to enhance this, at least we have a starting off ground to go. Be like, okay, this is what the explosion gave us for like, the first or second take, and this is how we have to implement it in the CG to kind of match what we shot practically. And like vice versa, like maybe it's for safety reasons, you just can't do anything practical. Then you have another tool to use to add this one thing to move your story along.
Right.
Yeah,
because like, and it's not like one or the other, you can use both together, and that's like really like the best version, is because like if you have one real element in the middle of your shot, right, and then you have like the effects on the side, people are gonna be like, oh, that's real, because there's something real I'm looking at right here, right, right here, and then like, but what's like the worst thing in a movie? Bad VFX. I mean, there are other bad things, but bad VFX is pretty bad. So like. That's why it's best to just sometimes maybe just do it practically, because you can't do the VFX. So do it practically, then your movie's real, and that's sweet. So.
Do you guys have any specifics?
Hold on, sorry, what's your name?
Gabriel.
Gabriel, can you pull up a video? I do have a specific example, actually. It's nice.
Which video would you like to see?
Did you pull up what would we call it? The Master Chief one.
The glitch one?
No. What did I even call this? Look up Master Chief Freddie W.
Master Chief.
You'll be Master Chief. There it is. That one. Yeah. Okay. Skip ahead and get ready to pause it. Skip his ass first.
There we go.
Okay, who's been on a cruise? Right. Cruises are crazy. All right. Okay. Hit play. Just go to the end. Go to the end. Go to the end. Skip. Yeah. Back. Farther. Right there. No, farther back. Right there, and get ready to pause it. Click it and then pause it right away. Alright, so we got a warthog in this shot. So there's a couple options here for how we were going to get the Halo warthog in the shot. One was to use the model that they use for the warthog, which it's super expensive. We can't touch that. So we're not real production, so we don't get that. The other one was to download the 3D model online and render it, put the materials on it, texture, render, lighting, and shadow, everything. Could have done that. Harder, more time consuming, and a lot harder to get looking right. Third option is the one we use here, which was to go out and to buy the Halo Warthog toy, which you can buy from Toys R Us, and then shoot it. So here's what we did with that, was we basically shot the toy on the ground, about the same angle, and then in After Effects, cut out the toy, and then made it scaled it up to be about the right size. So essentially that's a model, what you're seeing. And then, obviously, to make it really sit in there, like, we're rotoing out me, we're green screening this edge for me, but this is a toy.
This is a laser pointer.
Oh, cool.
At the top.
Hey.
Yeah, I think we can get that. So, but this is basically a $20 toy. And what's nice about it is, we shot it at the same time. The sun is up over here somewhere, going down this direction. The shadow is real, the lighting off of the reflection off of the panel here is real as well. And the only other thing that we did was, you can take for models, you can take a silver Sharpie and just like lightly touch it against the edges and then make it look like, like a sort of worn down paint. That's it. That's a $20 shot. And that's a lot easier to do that than it was to get on Turbo Squid or get online and download 3D model and learn how to model and stuff like that. So we have this reputation on the channel of being guys who do like tons of crazy VFX and tons of 3D all the time and everything's a visual effect. And the fact is, like, we actually don't. We have that reputation, but it's not a fair reputation for us. We actually, as often as we can, we don't do stuff in 3D. As often as we can, we do stuff practically or with models or other ways of doing things. Instead of having like, oh, let's do a levitating ball and let's do that in CG, it's like, no, we'll just tie a string to a ball and hold it up and then paint out or remove the string later, which is much easier. So in that way, you're getting a much better looking effect. And this is sort of one of my favorite examples of like, oh, you just use a toy and have it look pretty good. The reflection off of my armor here is about the same as that. There's very little work that needs to be done to make this look good, as opposed to the other way. This took maybe 20 minutes. The other way might take you 2, 3, 4 hours just to get a render out and have it look good.
You want to play the rest of the clip? Is it there?
Yeah, if you just play real quick, what happens is it throws a thing, and so as it blows up, I mean, again, that was just us yanking it with the. All right.
You can pause it.
Yeah, it's good. All right.
So another example that I had is that, so for things like this, like depending on time and all your other constraints, it's better to do things practically. So I kind of got my start. I was working on Walking Dead season 1, and we had a lot of like CG blood splatter, which like they just hired like tons of people, and we just took off like this wing of this building just for blood, because I think at the time they were like, oh, we have a super fast production schedule, you gotta turn around X amount of shots for X amount of days. But a lot of my shots is really annoying because it's like, so if you shoot through a zombie or something and the blood goes through his back, then you have to worry about like, oh, where's the blood splatter on? Like, how do I paint blood like on the house or like on the leaves and on the ground and have it stick and like solve the camera to make sure, all that kind of stuff. Whereas if you just like, shot some fake blood with some like cotton balls and whatever, then it's just there, But But the thing with that is, in terms of production, they weren't able to do that. So, like you're doing post as like an add-on. So you can kind of do it either way depending on what your limitation is. Like, yeah, Freddie did that for like $20. And a lot of stuff that he shot on that, it's like given. You don't have to worry about like, like highlights, the shadows matching, all that kind of stuff, where you will just get it if you just shoot it practically. Whereas if you want to go on Turbo Squid, then you have to like, have like separate thought process of figuring out all that kind of stuff to make it like look good as real as you can, and that's also time consuming. So.
Do you guys have any good stories of where you thought you would do practical and ended up doing VFX, or vice versa? You wanted to do VFX and ended up doing practical? And this was a good example of a creative example.
Maybe
Good job.
maybe the ball pit. For when you look down over, we're gonna do like 3D balls in like the main area, but then it was like tiled.
So we have a video coming out in a little bit. We're still working on it right now. Where basically we fill up the office with ball pit balls, and it starts off like, it's a cool prank, guys. Freddie filled up the office with ball balls, and then it's like 3 hours later. Everyone's like, I can't. Where's my keys? I can't go. So it turns into like a horror movie. So there's gonna be one shot. There's one shot we had in there where Clint like gets up to the edge of our space and looks over the edge and into this common area we have, and he's supposed to look over and see that's filled with ball pit balls. Now we don't have that many ball pit balls. We could have filled up our office and that was about it. So the way that we thought we would do it is like, well, okay, that could be CG balls in that space. That seems to be one way. That could probably be a quick way of doing it. And then instead, what did you do, Clint?
Well, so you got like these bags, right? And they're like, I don't know, they're like this big, up to here, something like this.
They're pretty big.
Yeah,
they're pretty big.
Yeah.
So I tiled it. I had to like drag this bag.
So he put a camera up there and just rolled it, and then he sat there and walked this bag across the whole thing
for 45 minutes. 45 minutes. And I packed up the freaking camera, and put everything away, the tripod. And then I imported the footage, and it was like out of focus. And I was like, I didn't do it again.
That's what you were doing.
But that was still faster. But to be fair, I saw a render that you're doing of CG balls, and that's still faster than the render it took.
Yeah.
But basically, it's like every single section of the floor would then in the video would have ball like
real ball.
Real ball.
Because it's real.
Yeah.
So it was that and just a lot of Photoshop.
Yep.
And I want to get into fun tips and tricks in a second, but first I kind of want to go over the different positions there are in visual effects and different avenues and different jobs. Because there's a lot of people here that want to direct, and there's a lot of people who do want to get into VFX. And I want to talk a little bit about the relationships between the VFX artist, the VFX supervisor, and the director. So who's making the calls when it comes to the look of things? Is that the director or the VFX artist? And what are the different positions when it comes to getting into VFX? What is the director doing? What is the supervisor doing? What are the artists doing?
So, everybody sort of falls to the call of the director. You basically have in the VFX industry, you have the on-set position is VFX supervisor. The VFX supervisor basically sits there and knows what's coming up in terms of what visual effects need to happen and what the shots are, and they're basically there making sure that they're basically representatives of the VFX company that will do the work. They make sure that they get everything they need. So if there's a green screen that needs to go up for the shot, they make sure that it goes up for the shot. If there needs to be a tracking marker or whatever it is, they're the ones in charge of making sure that when the footage comes to the VFX company, they have all the pieces they need. So they'll be sitting there, they'll take a lot of reference photos. If they're trying to recreate something in 3D, they'll take a lot of reference photos on set. That job is, by the way, pretty cushy. There's not a lot of stuff that you do, because a lot of times, when it comes to the visual effects side of things, you've done your homework, everyone has an idea like, okay, this is the shot. The shot will be from up here, it's going to do this, and that's the shot that we need to get. So what you're doing as a VFX supervisor is like, all right, I got to put some stickers here and there, and I'm done, and I get to eat lunch before everybody else. So VFX supervisor is a nice cushy job. Generally not like a super difficult one, but it's one of those jobs where if you do it wrong, everyone hates you, because you screwing up as a visual effects supervisor, it's like, oh, I forgot to do a green screen thing there, and now you've added 20 hours to the workload of this shot. Whereas if you had done your job right, you'd be done in, say, 2 hours on it. So that's your on-set sort of gig. You have visual effects artists who, you have varying degrees of visual effects artists. You have, I'm trying to think of how detailed to get into this, but you basically, anything and everything in general right now, and so for us on YouTube and also in general for us starting out, and I think for a lot of you, you will do everything yourself. You'll do compositing, you'll do 2D stuff, maybe even 3D stuff. You'll take reference photos. You're doing everything yourself. Generally in the visual effects industry, as it is right now, you specialize. So you might only do rotoscoping. You might only be cutting out, people from backgrounds. You might only be dealing with green screens. You might only be dealing with camera and camera tracking and that kind of thing. So when it comes to, if you're interested in getting into the VFX industry, how many people are interested in being like VFX artists or getting into that world? A few of you out there. So when it comes to that side of things, it behooves you right now to just get good at and to try as many different things as possible and see what you like doing. Because in general, you're going to be specializing, and that's how a lot of the visual effects houses and a lot of the visual effects work tends to be specialized work.
Yeah, I think going off that, it just also depends on like what kind of category you're doing. So of course, a lot of YouTube, you kind of have to just kind of fill every position there is. For TV and commercials and films, like you definitely work with the director, works with like a VFX supervisor who sometimes on-set and off-set supervisors are different people and they can represent the same company or different companies. So you have the supervisor, you can have like a VFX producer, you might also have a VFX editor that will help with the editing team, editing in the VFX shots. It just depends on like the level of kind of where you are. And then in terms of VFX artists, there's also like different levels. Like a lot of people start out as a junior something, like junior rotoscoper or junior tracker or something like that, and then you become like a mid artist and then a senior artist, and as like kind of like your title moves up, you just have like more responsibilities and you kind of become the point person. If something does go wrong, it's like it's that person's fault, or because everything kind of trickles down from your work. Yeah.
Does everyone here know what rotoscoping is? Yeah? By show of hands? Yeah? Yeah, I see some nods out there. Yeah, rotoscoping is rough.
Rotoscoping is the process of frame by frame, like, the lasso tool of Photoshop, you want to cut yourself out of something, it's doing that for every single frame.
Cutting out everything. If someone's moving like this, you have to like cut out every single frame.
Yeah.
And incidentally, when they do 3D conversions, like movies of 3D conversions, in order to separate stuff out, they are doing that to every single frame. And there's entire companies of hundreds of people who just sit there just hours a day just sitting there tracing out fingers. And the worst is like trees. Like the best is like in a 3D conversion movie when it's like they're in the forest. Because someone has to sit there and be like, I gotta cut out all these leaves and figure out which leaf is, and also like which leaf is closer to the other one. Which is why like if you watch a 3D converted movie, sometimes like forest stuff, you're just like, what is going on? Because this stuff's like, it can be almost impossible to do just because it's so complex.
Yeah, and another role that's kind of on the same level of worseness in terms of like rotoscoping for 3D movies is like painters. So if you have my hand here, you will trace it out and then you will move it over slightly for the other eye, and then you have to paint in the difference. So you're just like literally painting in like tiny micro things, but if you do it badly, your eye just goes there because it looks off. So yeah, it's like, which one would you like to be doing, tracing or like painting colors?
It's a rough job. I mean, there are way worse jobs out there, when it comes to like the whole scheme of things. But like, rotoscoping's rough. Compositing is a lot of fun, because it's like I'm going to take all these assets that other people may have built for me, and I'm going to bring them together and make sure they are composited into the scene properly so it looks real.
So compositing is taking all the various elements and blending it all together. So if it's someone on the green screen, it's getting rid of the green screen and putting them into that scene.
Make sure the lighting's matched, the shadows, color, everything's matched up and good.
Well, speaking of tough jobs, let's get into something fun with VFX horror stories, because Clint brought this up earlier. We were talking about like.
I want to hear your horror stories, Clint. I don't think I have any horror stories.
I got
best ones.
I got two. Okay.
Oh boy.
There's a program called View, which is like generating landscapes and like mountains and stuff. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna render out this ocean with mountains in the background. And it took 4 days to render this one frame frame, and at the end, like there was like 2 hours left, and this was when I was living in Georgia. There was a thunderstorm, and power just went out, and I was like, lost everything.
Oh god, no.
There's that, and there's another
Just
one.
uninstalled it, never used it.
No, I haven't used it since. I haven't used it
It'll
since.
bring back those feelings, you know? Yeah.
Awful. It was horrible. And then just rotoscoping, like horror stories where like you have this guy like at a double door, but it's like the coffee shop one, so it's like
don't emergency exit.
no, I won't. So it's like checkered, and he's like doing this like dance in front of this door, and he's like opening it and closing it, and like I have to. There's a green screen behind here, but there's all these reflections, so the key is horrible. And I have to like rotoscope this guy, and his hair is like going all over the place, and it's like 900 frames. It's just ridiculous. It's for this like short film that this director wanted to do that I worked on with a buddy of mine, Joe, Synapse Effects.
See, that's almost just like go find another door.
Yeah.
That's the VFX supervisor's job of saying,
Yeah,
hey,
so that's yeah,
excuse
exactly.
me.
But we were there, like on set. Like I should have been like.
That was your fault.
I know.
You paid for your own mistakes.
I know. Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah. My horror stories kind of, okay, when I was starting out, I had to paint out a lot of body parts, you know, to get certain ratings for certain TV shows, so that was kind of horrible.
Wait, whoa.
Yeah, just doing that for like days, or like I can't be here anymore.
Wow.
And then something that's slightly better, but not really. So I did work on a big, like a temple movie to convert it to 3D, and I just wanted to do it purely just to see what the process is at one of these big studios, and like I would never do that again. Like there's so many other horrible jobs I would take, you know, before I take another like 3D conversion job again. Yeah.
Well, I liked your robot chicken story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I worked at Robot Chicken for a season, and they thought it was funny being one of the only females in post-production, so they gave me a lot of penis jokes. And then by the end of the season, that's all I have for a reel. And like, you know, the dialogue is mixed in with the music, so I can't, so like, if I mute it, it just, you don't get it, but then if I turn it on, it's like so offensive to like everyone.
Let's before we start opening up to questions, I'd like to just kind of start wrapping up with like, what are some helpful tips and tricks you've learned along the way? What special software or shortcuts or just things that make it more fun for you? Like,
Yeah. So real quick, I'll answer a lot of the questions right off that we're probably gonna get, which is we use Adobe After Effects. After Effects is a compositing program. It will not do things like generate 3D cars and stuff like that without plugins. So After Effects is a good go-to. If you're a student, you can get it for $15, $20 a month.
20 bucks a month.
20 bucks a month. As a student, you can get the educational discount from the Adobe Creative Cloud. I do recommend it.
Yep.
If your parents are going to give you guff for wanting to like spend money on a professional like tool set, then I don't know. I guess it's like cheaper than It's like cheaper than Minecraft. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like it's cheaper than like buying 360 games, you know? Or no, it's not even 360 anymore. It's Xbox One now, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also the big thing, and this is like the big thing, and this is weird, and everyone's gonna hate me for this. Right now is probably the best time to like learn and experiment and try things. It's a lot harder, and I assume some of you out there probably are, in the working world. A lot harder to improve a hobby skill set once you also are trying to hold down a full-time job, pay rent, what have you. You can do it. It's just harder, But when you're a kid, and if you're living with your folks or even in college, much easier to do that because you have more time. You straight up have more time, and you won't know how much time you have until you don't have that time anymore. Right? So here's the thing: don't play video games. I'm not kidding.
Don't marathon
There's
things on
so
Netflix.
much time that you spend playing video games. Like if I had a choice, like back in college, if I was just like, all right, if I chose not to play video games and just like work on this stuff, then I'd be better, and the company would be in a better place. Everything would just be better for you. You'd be a better artist at, because you're not going to remember that. And you can always do that when you're an adult too.
But right now, when you do have tons and tons of time and your brain is pliable and you can like learn stuff and pick it up and absorb it quickly, don't play video games. Like, I'm not kidding. You're just gonna. It's like the time you spend playing video games while entertaining is not as useful as the time you can spend getting better at a craft and getting better at your skills.
That's true. To counter that though,
Yeah.
Mario Kart and Smash Bros are great, and they also like video games have inspired me. Like the games I played when I was a kid totally inspired me, like with the stuff that I want to do like now and in the future.
Yeah, but the difference is the games that you play as a kid like would stop at some point. You know what I'm saying? Like you
Yeah.
can play them and they'd be done. But now it's like
play till like
Call of Duty's just like I'll just play forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can just go.
Yeah.
Be careful of that.
But what
Good
you're
for
saying
breaks,
about
not for hobbies.
totally, yeah, totally. Freddie, what you're saying about like learning now, like
Yeah.
just learning as much as you can before you get a big job. Like so in Hayao Miyazaki, you guys know Hayao Miyazaki? In his book, he was saying something very similar to that. He was like, if one piece of advice, what would you say? And then he said something like, don't get into the industry too early because if you do, you're just gonna get swamped with work, and you won't be able to like learn tools and skills that you should need like going forward. You gotta like build that like base, you know. When you have time to yourself and you have your free time, like spend that time learning and growing, you know, because that's gonna be like the whole basis for like the rest of your career. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know, like if you do want to do a break, like one of the things I do, you know, still to this day is I just watch a lot of like making of. I think that's kind of how I got into visual effects professionally anyway. Just took one of my favorite movies, like I love Harry Potter. And I was like, oh, like the making of, and I just like watched that, you know, for a lot. And, you know, then, you know, that can like trigger something. It's like, oh, how did they do this particle? Let me look it up on YouTube. It's like, oh, Freddie has a tutorial. Other people are like, oh, this is how you do it. Like, that's kind of how you can also like figure out the resources that's available. Because I think one of my friends was like, there's no reason for you to like not learn right now. Like it's so easy. You just go online. Like that's it. You know, there's no reason for you to be like, oh, I don't know how to do this. The end. Like there's so many resources, and I think for you can kind of like balance between like, oh, this is what I'm good at. This is what I don't know. Learn it, try it. Be like, oh, this is not really my my thing, and then try something else. There's so many things in visual effects, whether 2D, 3D, like painting, fine arts. Like you don't know which one you like the most. You know?
And the most important thing, like visual effects is not that hard. If you really kind of break it down, it's less about what you do. It's like the actual act of doing it is not as hard as knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Right. If you, it's a total difference between sitting down, having a problem in front of you, and being like, oh, I know, here are the steps I have to take. Doing those steps is not hard. But what's hard is knowing what steps you should take, what order you should do it in, how much time you should be spending on each one. That's the hard part, and that's what you get from experience and from learning and from trying and experimenting. And the funny thing about it is like, it's not difficult, but the time that you spend is the best time you can spend is trying to develop your eye for it. Like you need to be able to get to a point, and the fastest way you get better at visual effects, and I would argue a lot of sort of filmmaking, is being able to look at your own work and being like, yeah, that sucks. And be like this, but it's not, so first step, being able to acknowledge something sucks. If you can get past that, that's good. The second step is then, what about it sucks? Then figuring out why, like this doesn't work, this doesn't fit. Why is that? Oh, it's moving around, or oh, the lighting doesn't quite match. You have to know why it sucks. Then the third step, mastery, is knowing what to do to make it not suck anymore. Like that's the 3 steps of mastery.
Yeah,
is acknowledging it sucks.
The Freddie Wong VFX Film School.
Freddie Wong VFX Film School.
In the Roto
Number
Film
one.
School.
Someone put this on a shirt.
Number 1.
Why does this thing suck? No, this sucks. Period. 2, why does it suck? 3, how do I make it not suck?
Yeah, it's just pretty much become like an efficient problem solver. Everything else it just becomes like muscle memory after a while. Just hit these hotkeys.
Yeah.
And then,
It's
just do
it's
it.
good to fail. It's good to learn what doesn't work. It's good to figure it out, and then you can find those steps to take so it does work.
Yeah. So it's good to fail on your own projects where like you're the only one that was like, oh, this sucks. You know, as opposed to be like on a team and then everyone else like, it's not that good.
Yeah, they won't tell you it sucks, they'll just fire you.
Yeah.
That's true.
And they won't tell you why they fired you.
Yeah. You'll just be like, you're not gonna get a call back. That's it.
No, that's what like VFX tests are good for. Like it's not short film. It's just like a test, you know. So Yeah, just gotta test it out.
But I feel like you guys probably all are all at different levels and all have a different range of questions and stuff. So I think we should probably open up some questions.
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point. Questions?
Let's open up the questions. We'll just have a sort of open discussion
We have a
here.
hand back there with cool tattoos.
You guys were talking about rotoscoping earlier.
Yes.
How excited were you when the roto brush came out?
Roto is good. I was very excited. But the funny thing about Roto Brush, which is a tool in After Effects, is that it's really good for what I call good enough VFX. We've even brought on guys who are like rotoscope artists, and they're very meticulous, and they would do regular, rotoscoping and be very, very precise with it. And like the way that they test you in companies is they'll play it back at like a quarter speed, zoomed in, like 300%, and they would check to make sure every frame is pixel perfect. The thing is, you don't watch movies that way, so a lot of times our rule is Roto Brush is great for getting it to the point where you see it a couple times at full speed, and you're like, okay, that looks good. And if you really freeze framed it and go through it, you'd be like, oh, I can see there's some problems here and there. But at speed, you don't really see it. So it's what I call good enough, which is good because it's a time saver. A lot of our rotoscoping is in the world of good enough. If you like paused it and freeze framed it, like you would be like, oh wow, the hair isn't perfect there. But the thing is, nobody does that. And the people who do that, well, they're not really, you lost them. They weren't paying attention to what you were doing anyway,
Pick your battles. Yep.
Is it recommended to know visual effects if you are an editor?
Yeah, I think so, because the rule, like editing nowadays and a lot of movie stuff, a lot of stuff is visual effects. Even if it's like stuff like, oh, there's a cable in the shot, or oh, there's a telephone pole we want to get rid of. There's a lot of stuff that you do that's cleanup, and there's a lot of stuff that is visual effects nowadays, especially as you go forward. So in general, as a general rule, the more you know about every job, the better. The better you are, the more well-rounded you are. But specifically, visual effects and editing have a very close relationship, and it behooves you to know it pretty well. Not necessarily like how to do it, but to know like what you can fix. Because in that you might see something and be like, oh, you know what? You can fix this. I can use this take. But it might be a kind of thing where you're like, you know what? I can't fix that. I have to use this other take. That's an editing decision that's informed by your knowledge.
In the back here?
Yeah, so as a beginning VFX artist, so say you have you don't have like a lot of source material to learn from, what would be like a good like website or something like that you go to find that source material to really practice the basics?
The source material is hard to find. One of the things that we want to do is we want to start giving out our stuff as source material. As far as sites go, probably the only one I can think of is VFX PhD. You can sign up and you can do lesson plans, and they'll have good source material that you can work off of. So check out FX PhD for that specifically. Otherwise, the easiest place, if you can't pay for it or can't afford that, is just get a camera and start generating it yourself.
You had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just wondering like how much of, do you guys think that VFX is like a viable industry to get into like a reasonable one? Because I know you guys just like sort of you guys build your own stuff. But
VFX industry as a service industry, as an industry where you will do work for other people, is hard. And it's hard unless you're a giant company right now or a very small, lean boutique operation. It's the middle ground that's suffering, that's difficult, especially in this country. Because there's a lot of competition with other countries, and there's a lot of competition with countries that have tax incentives, which make it cheaper for those companies to work, which is just the way that the world is right now. It's difficult. I would say that your best bet, in the same way, this is the same advice I give actors. Acting is tough, but acting is a little easier if you can generate your own projects, right? And you can generate your own projects for you to act in. Visual effects is tough. It's a little bit easier if you yourself are a director, or you would pair yourself up and find people who are directing things so that you have guaranteed stuff to work on and things that you're working on. That makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah, I wish someone gave me this advice earlier on, but it's always a good idea to just make your own content. It might be bad in the beginning, but that's like yours, you know?
Purple shirt, I think.
Yeah, just a small question. I currently have Adobe CS6 Natural Production. Is it more upgrade to 60?
Nah, not really. I think if you have it and it works for you, that's fine. CC had some features, but a lot of the features, I think the biggest thing would be 3D camera tracking.
I have a student discount Adobe Master Collection.
Yeah.
That came with Kursal University.
Yeah,
I'm a student of Kursal University, so.
Yeah, you definitely can. Again, it's like $20 a month as a student. CC adds some features and there's some plugins that kind of work well with it, but for the most part, it is doing the same thing. So I'll put it this way: 98% of everything that we've done on season 3 of VGHS was CS6.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of your channel, when Freddie Wong's channel was very small, you were doing everything yourself, and I'm assuming that you had interest in directing. So as the channel grew, did you find you had to like coax people as a producer, like excite them to start working on your projects to do the visual effects, so you could focus on what you were more interested in?
Yeah. So your general sort of what you kind of are touching on is the idea of early on, how do you crew up? How do you get people to work with you? Filmmaking is inherently a group endeavor, and it's very difficult to get a group together if not everyone's like down with it. It's tough, right? And so the way that you have to do it is you gotta be a charismatic dude. You gotta throw a pizza party. You gotta have free food. You gotta have it. You need to know what you're doing behind camera. There's nothing worse than being like, hey, help me out on my movie, and then you're sitting there and you're taking like 50 takes of something, and everyone's like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This sucks. My Saturday could be so much better spent. As opposed to, I think what we tried to do very early on, which was like, hey, let's have fun. It's not long. Our shoots are not going to be 12-hour shoots. Our shoots are going to be 2-hour shoots, and we're going to have pizza at the end of it, and we're all sitting around, play Super Smash Brothers afterwards. You have to kind of bribe people with fun because you don't have the other thing that bribe people with, aka money. Once you do have money, then you can start paying people, and then they'll start to show up. But until that, it very much behooves you to kind of be social and play it right on the social aspect.
I've always gotten tacos after I shot for you before.
Tacos are good.
Tacos are good, yeah. You can also like trade skills, like if you're like really consistent, like, oh, I can help you do X, Y, Z in turn, can you do this for my project, and just just make sure you give it back. So.
Yeah, people just have to like you. If no one likes you, you're not going to do work.
As weird as that, and as awful as that sounds, completely true, by the way.
You have to be a likable person,
Yeah.
What in the editing stage, in that, what is the ideal time to get the VFX to the VFX artist?
So it's flexible. So the industry, as the way it works, is it happens right away. And they'll send stuff, and there'll be a lot of iterations. It's inherently inefficient, but it keeps people, it's expensive and it's inefficient, but it allows people to be flexible in that sense, right? It gives VFX artists more time on it. The tactic we've adapted is sort of a hybrid approach, whereas we know, like for example, if there's like a one take, or if there's one big awesome shot that we know in the sequence is going to be there, and we know that this edit is not going to change from this. It's like, it has to be this way because we shot it like that. We'll do that and we'll send that out first immediately to give VFX artists as much time as possible. And we try and get as close as possible to a lock in terms of a lock cut before we send visual effects out. And a lot of times what you'll export your shot that you're going to VFX, and you'll give handles. So you'll give like 12 frames on one end and 12 frames on the other end, so that when you get it back and you do need to slide it a little bit, you have a little bit of flexibility. It's not as much flexibility as the whole shot, but you have some flexibility in terms of like if you need to tweak something.
Here.
Does RocketJump take interns?
Technically, we have to do it based on a semester, and I have to look. It's State California that dictates how we do that. We have to give school credit, and there's a whole thing for schools and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we'll let everyone know once we get that stuff figured out.
Yeah. Back here. Yep.
How strongly would you recommend Blender, which is free, versus Maya or 3ds Max?
What's your end goal with it? Is it doing stuff for yourself, or is it doing stuff in the industry?
Self.
So again, it's like it's all the principles of Blender and all those 3D programs are the same basic principles. It's like literally the same question, being like, how much would you recommend a Ryobi drill versus a Black & Decker versus a DeWalt? All three of those are drills. They have slightly different operations, but all put holes into wood. So you will learn, the basic skills that you get from it is good and is worthwhile. I would recommend stuff like 3ds and Maya for anyone who's if you can afford it, it's definitely worth it because it's just an easier and more intuitive tool set. There's a little more resources in terms of helping out on that. And also, if you ever get into sort of the professional side of things, that's the tool sets they'll be using. So it behooves you to know that end of things. But in general, in terms of just getting stuff done for yourself, plenty of good stuff being done in Blender. Again, it's a 3D program. You have access to photoreal shaders on that, so it's definitely a good starting point. And a lot of people can go really, really far with just that.
Maybe we should have a panel on carpentry.
Hammers. Yeah.
Don't get a Ryobi anything. It's not worth it. Pay a little bit more. Get the Makita. Get the DeWalt. Get the Milwaukee. That's correct.
Don't pay for shipping.
Any more questions? Right here.
How much previous do you guys do into your videos?
So movies nowadays will do just like literally every frame is previs. We'll do the closest we'll do the previs. We'll do storyboards, and we'll do like video storyboards, which will be like just a rough. Take a camera, jump around in front of it, and just rough cut it together. That's about the most that we do. I think as we get more and more complex with some sequences, we get more and more detailed with the previs, but generally not as much as what the film industry does, which is every frame CG'd out. You know.
Yeah, we have. If you look on our RocketJump 2 channel, we have our entire previs for the Jimmy Kimmel video we did up side by side with the finished video, so you can kind of see like how we plotted it out and what we were thinking. It's a fun little 2-minute thing. Marlon, I think you had a question?
Yes. As you were talking about the RotoBrush tool, what other techniques do you guys use to do rotoscoping?
So if you can get a green screen, $200 will get you a pop-up, fold-up green screen.
Worth it.
Oh no,
well
it's
worth
like
it.
110 now.
Oh, is it really?
Amazon, it's like
Amazon,
so
110.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
How much is just think about it. How much are you worth an hour? What's your hourly rate as a person? Let's say what's minimum wage? Like $8, $10? $10 an hour. 10 hours rotoscoping? Yeah. You'll do 10 hours of rotoscoping. You want to get a green screen. You'll save yourself money instantly by getting that thing. If you can, key it out using a green screen. Fastest way of doing it. RotoBrush is helpful. Throwing stuff like out of focus is helpful. Trying to change, just giving contrast. RotoBrush does actually really well against, even if it's not a green screen, even if it's just a blank white wall and you're doing something and you don't have, like, say, a white shirt against it. If you have color contrast, RotoBrush does it really, really fast. So that's another sort of quick technique for it.
Yeah, and if you gotta just do it like the dirty way, just like break it down into simple shapes. Just like focus on the head for the entire take, and then do like a separate shape for like the chest, and then right arm, right hand, left hand. Just like take it one thing at a time, and then not do like the entire thing per frame because you're just right.
And the fastest way to change, and the fastest way to do it is change your edit so you don't need to do it as much.
Don't use that tape.
If you're editing it, and you're like, we don't need to see the shot as much. There, done. Just cut away half of my work.
All right, we have Natalie in back.
Yep. Okay. How do you feel about like the importance of like fundamentals, as in like essential art ideas, design, like shot composition, comparison to VFX?
So it's super helpful. The two that really help you on that are perspective. So 3D perspective, perspective drawing, architectural perspective. A lot of people just don't understand what that should look like. And a lot of those principles are helpful when you're doing compositing and saying like, how far away do I put this? What's the scale of this? And you're just trying to eyeball it. It's like, no, painters have figured out how to do that properly for hundreds of years now. You can draw upon that knowledge. The other thing that's very, very helpful in compositing in terms of classical knowledge and fundamental knowledge is painting and light. Light specifically, photography, light direction, light intensity, quality of light. All the sort of things that you train as a photographer or even a painter that you pay attention to are things you have to pay attention to when you're trying to match two things together and put them in and make them blend into a scene and making people believe that that's a realistic thing that you're presenting them. So those two, I think, are far and away the two most important skills to have as a visual effects artist.
And I think whatever art medium you do, you're just kind of giving yourself more opportunities to train your eye. I remember in high school, I did like years of just like composition, right? And like it never really clicked. You're like, where do you drive your eye? Where do you drive your eye? That's like all compositing is. It's like, where do you want your focus to be? And that I took a lot from just traditional drawing and painting.
Right here.
So going off like the previs and the time questions, back when especially you had like the weekly release schedule, right?
Yes.
And you're in the ideation phase. How do you decide kind of preemptively what you can pull off and meet your release date, and what might be too far and you need to scale back your story?
So what's helpful in that regard is knowing, again, having a very clear idea of how long effects take. So we're talking about a time sensitive, you try and get things done in a week kind of schedule. So knowing that, okay, we can do this and this will take about a day, and we can do about this much in about this amount of time. Having that knowledge is very helpful. The other thing is also being able to scale stuff back. So we might have shot let's say a gunfight sequence, and there's 100 shots of gun stuff. And being like, yeah, you know what, we don't need that much, and we can scale. It'd be nice to be able to have the shot, but in our time, looking at our timeline, let's cut this one out. Let's cut this one out. Let's just get to this section. So we've definitely done that. We've definitely had pieces that we've excised because of knowing, again, in the middle of it, seeing the process and seeing how much time it was going to take. I mean, more often than not, we were wrong, so we were doing all-nighters every week. So what it really kind of comes down to is like visual effects and editing and post-production is like a big container, right? It fills up. If you give it a week, you'll have a week's worth in there. If you give it 2 days, you'll finish it in 2 days. You know, you do a 40-hour film festival, it's like you'll finish that in 48 hours. It might not be the best, but you'll finish it. You'll fill it up with the amount of work that you need.
Yeah.
Question about the RocketJump Film School that you're planning to launch. How complete is it in terms of course, and is it as complete as the film university, like full sail?
No, this is going to be a completely online tutorial, and we're going to be updating it as we go. So there's not going to be a full set school that you can complete. It's going to be ongoing. We plan to do this for as long as we can. So as new stuff comes up, as new things, new technology comes out, it's going to be completely just updating. So it's not going to be the same as a film school. We're just trying to give you the same resources that we have and how we do stuff and interview filmmakers that we like, and just kind of give you that perspective for free and be as accessible as possible. But if you want a structured curriculum like a film school, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah, ideally it's a supplement to your own education going out and shooting stuff. Because that's the one thing that we can't
We're
do.
trying to get you guys just go out and shoot and give you stuff to do.
Because even as a student who's at university, they still don't teach anything about a visual effect, just like filming stuff. That's all.
So I think the key takeaway is if you're curious about something, you have to cultivate an attitude which is, I'm curious about this, and I got to go seek it out, and I got to figure it out. There's a lot of books, there's a lot of resources out there now. I remember even just like myself, my high school, it was like they had like 6 books on filmmaking, and I just was like, even if it was like ones where I just had nothing, like no interest in, I still checked them out. I still read them cover to cover because like, well, I'm interested in this, and I'm going to absorb as much as I can where I can, wherever I am. That's the most important thing. No school is going to teach you how to be someone who is seeking knowledge, right? You have to develop that as a skill set. You have to develop that as just who you are as a person. It helps you out because it makes life a lot easier if you're constantly seeking knowledge for yourself. It makes it's an important skill, I think, to have.
Yeah, I am taking.
So can I also make a plug? Right?
Oh yeah, sure, go for it.
So, because this is a library, I do want to talk about the over 6 million items that you can access for free with your library card. We have consulted with all these RocketJump Film School people. We have talked to both Freddie and Lauren. We have lots of the materials that they recommend, and we'll be putting out book lists and resource lists, and you can get all of that for free with a library card and return it to 73 locations. So a lot of it's available online.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff is online, but a lot of online stuff isn't as well put together as some of the sort of core fundamental film books. Walter Murch has a book called In the Blink of an Eye, which is like the book on editing. And there's no blog that's going to be as good as that. 5 C's of Cinematography is a good fundamental starting point in terms of learning how camera works and cinematic language and visual language. All these are, again, you can pick them up one at a time or just go straight to the book and just, save your time and just get through it.
Yeah, we're gonna release book lists and resources and that kind of stuff. And another part of the film school is pointing you towards resources that we found helpful. So it's not just like, check out this one pamphlet that RocketJump Film School put together. It's like, no, Walter Birch wrote a whole book about this cool stuff. Like, go check that out. Like, don't listen to us. Like, whatever.
Yeah, there's another book called The Art and Science of Digital Compositing that will just pretty much covers like all the history of compositing from way before to like special effects to how we were doing it to like a couple years ago. So yeah.
The art and science of digital compositing.
Yeah.
Sweet.
For someone who feels like they have to take out student loans and get a degree
Yes.
to get into this industry, what would you say to that person?
I would say, luckily, the film industry is the one industry of many, but it's one of the industries that really doesn't care about your education. They don't really care if you're a college graduate. They do care if you're a good person, and they do care if you're easy to work with, and they do care what you've done. And I'm not saying, because I think there's benefits to film school. I think there's benefits to sort of the traditional film education. But you don't need it 100%. I have friends who did not go to film school and are very successful right now. I have friends who did go to film school and are very successful. I've also the exact opposite. People who didn't go to film school and they just completely floundered and it was just they didn't do well, now they're doing something else. And the people who did go to film school and they're not doing anything related sort of to film anymore, you know? So it really depends on who you are as a person, if you have that sort of drive to sort of consume knowledge and seek out knowledge yourself, and if you are a social person. Those are two really important things in sort of film, is you do need to be a social person. It's very difficult, unless you're an animator, to be like just a shut in and not like talk to people. Animators can, they get away with it, and they're amazing, and they get amazing animators, and they don't have to be social. But in terms of filmmaking, it is a group project, it's a group endeavor. There are many people who are involved in the process of making everything from a short to a feature, and you need to figure out how to associate and to communicate and to work with as many people as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest advantage I got out of film school was meeting Freddie and
meeting people in general.
And people in general, but like meeting all of my friends who I've collaborated with, and I've gotten a lot of jobs through friends who went to USC, through other friends who know people who went to USC. And it was just it was the community that really got my foot in the door. And it just gave me the time to like learn my own craft and experiment, and like, you know, I have a student blown dead. Just a ton of it, but I did have that extra time to make mistakes and try out that space and meet people and learn to work on a team and meet the people I would work with in the future. But I also have a lot of friends who would PA for free, work for free, intern, and get their foot in the door that way and learn on set or learn through experience or learn just through helping. And because they had such a good attitude and people liked them so much, they would ask them back for the next one.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like what kind of person you are and kind of knowing your weaknesses. Like if you need someone that like, hey, send me a schedule. These are the things I have to learn this semester and then next semester. All doing that while be in a community that's all filmmakers, then yeah, I think that's a really good choice. But if you're like someone that's like, I'm just gonna cold call and then PA and do all the other things without anyone telling me to do that, like I could just propel myself forward, then I think there's no reason for you to like not just get experience for it right now.
Yeah. Any other questions before we wrap it up? Right here.
I'm just wondering, so for rendering time and stuff, is the SSD like, and how much space, if it's like that's way more worth it to get that instead of waiting like forever? I don't know what the...
Depends on what you're doing, but in general, if your computer can play Crysis, you can do computer graphics stuff. But yeah, you want hard drive space, you want memory more than anything else. Memory, hard drive space, and a good graphics card.
Right here.
This is for everyone. Do any of you have a favorite project that you've worked on and why?
Oh, it's weird because all my favorite projects are just like weird ones now. Yeah. Clint, what about you? Like I really enjoyed VGHS, but it also was 3 years of my life and it was like a lot of time spent on it. So to me, the ones I enjoy are the ones that are not 3 years. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? It's like weird. It's like I actually got like I enjoy like there's like I'm trying to do this podcast where we play golf and we have GoPros on our helmets, like on wear helmets and like we play golf and we call it the golf cast. Like that's like so much fun to me because it's not 3 years of my life and I can play golf, you know. So that's high up on that list.
Okay, so like the first time I did Maya, we just did this very simple exercise where you just make the planets, you know, so you just make like spheres and you texture them and then you animate a camera and you fly through it. I don't think like anything was as cool, like as mind blowing for me. Because I was like, oh my
like
god.
Creating a universe.
Creating a universe, you know? So I just didn't get much better than that.
Yeah. I did a Killzone short film a while ago, and that would probably be one of like my favorite ones. Because yeah, there were planets in the sky. And there were like spaceships and stuff, and it was like sci-fi real explosions, like rotoing real explosions. Not that bad actually, because it's like it's cool. Yeah, that was fun.
2 more questions, and then we're gonna start wrapping up.
Someone once said to me that the film industry is an extroverted industry of introverts. What do you think of that?
Is it what?
Extroverted industry of introverts.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd buy that.
Yeah. Well,
I've seen enough film parties to know that these are not party animals that we are hanging out with.
Well, because I feel like for the majority of your day, you're spending by yourself in some like weird cubicle setup, you know, and then in front of a computer that has no like human interaction with you, you know. So I think that just, you know, kind of part of how you spend your day. But I do think that is very important to, you know, if you know that that's kind of something you need to work on, then just, you know, do more of that. Because I feel like transitioning from like a VFX artist or like supervisor, like I definitely had to up my communication skills. And you have to understand like how do you say one sentence like 10 different ways to make sure everyone you're working with, you know, can understand what you're saying. I think that takes, it's like a different kind of skills, I feel, yeah.
White t-shirt in the back, yeah.
Do you think that people, like online audience on YouTube, care more about VFX than actual film aspects of filming? Like for instance, when I first heard about your channel, like my friend came to me and said, hey, this guy had a video with cool effects in it, not like an actual good film. Do you think people online would think that?
I'll put it this way. I'll put it this way.
That's what he got out of it.
Yeah, which video was it?
Oh, it was like one of the early ones. Like, I think it was the first person shooter, the first one that you guys did.
I would say here's the difference with that. If there wasn't like humor and jokes in that, I'll put it this way. That video is probably the most copied video we've ever done, right? Yeah. Like if you do first-person shooter real life, like you get like 1,000 videos. People doing basically the same thing, some cases even better than we've done it. None of those videos have ever gotten the same level of success. And I think one, a lot of it has to do with, I don't know, you know, there's obviously the ideas sort of quote unquote been done, but I think a lot of it has to do with, is this something that is entertaining? I think people care about entertaining more than anything else. Like, people don't care about perfect VFX and stuff like that. Because if they did, then the ILM YouTube channel should be the most subscribed YouTube channel. They have the best visual effects in the world. Are you kidding? They do breakdowns and they show their reel. It's like the best stuff. They're not the most subscribed YouTube channel. The ones that are most subscribed are the ones that are entertaining. And I think that's the most important thing.
Well, you can ask us. We're going to be out here later, so let's hear a new voice here.
I just had a question. How or where from do you guys film most of your crew positions, like the basic PAs and that kind of thing?
All right, you guys ready for this? Everyone's leaning in on their seats. We get our crew and our cast from people we know and people we went to school with. It's our friends. This is why the film industry is a hard industry to break into. You think Steven Spielberg is like, hey, I'm gonna do a new movie. I'm gonna try some new people out. Heck no. He's been working with these guys for 30 years. He's not gonna just be like, hey, my key grip, hey, you know, I wanna try someone new though. You know what I'm saying? There's new talent. I'm just gonna give it a shot. I got this new movie I'm doing. I think J.J. Abrams was like, yeah, we got new Star Wars. Let's fill it up half with brand new people. That's why it's a hard industry to get into. It's because these people who are creating, who are working, they don't just go out and seek new people. It's not that's closed doors. It's not the hardest to get into because there's no jobs. It's because people are going to work with the people that they trust, the people that they have experience with, the people that they know, right? And you know this is for a fact. You're not going to just, even you working on your own, you're not going to, the first person you think of is going to be your friends. That's one of the benefits of film school, is that was a group of friends that I grew upon. So a lot of people who grew up straight up are people that I went to school with, and straight up people, and that's a lot of the places that we get stuff from. That's not saying we never find new people, and we have people, we don't have a need for that, and when we do, it's 100% based on recommendations from the people we're replacing. So it's like, hey, I'm sorry this person couldn't do sound for us, well, do you know anybody? And they'll give us a list of names, and then we'll offer you a recommendation, we're gonna go. That's the way the sort of industry works, because there's no reason to put, it's such a high stakes thing to go up on set, spend money, and to have a crew and put a crew together, that for any key position, you know, I'm not talking about PA stuff like that, but for any key position, you're not gonna risk having someone that might screw things up or doesn't jive with you. You're gonna ask for recommendations, you're gonna go with people that you already know. That's why the film industry is hard to break into. So for those of you looking for work, looking to crew up, looking to do stuff, your best bet is to find the people that you know who are working in it and look around you even in this room and see who you have and what skills you have and offer that up. That's going to be your best bet, because that you have to start building those relationships in that way. And you're going to have your own crew of people that you build up. You're going to have your own list of folks that you call for various jobs, and that's how you build it.
Great. I think we're getting to about that time. We will be outside in the courtyard to kind of meet and greet for about 15 minutes or so as the library's closing out. But we passed out our surveys, and we hope you fill them out. They are very helpful for us and for the RocketJump Film School. Thank you guys so much for coming, and thanks everybody. Freddie and Kaitlyn.